It's outrageous. The guy can't even take his,
Counselor Dahlman.
let alone his wife. Wow.
She's not
Very
on the-
interesting.
Oh, it is an interesting market. I learn stuff all the time. He wants to take on the road. Yeah, he wants to do it all.
I call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the work session for the City of Kalispell, July 28, 2025. Can I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Dowd.
Here.
Counselor Dahlman. Counselor Dahlman. I do show her online, but we'll keep going. Counselor Fisher.
Here.
Counselor Hunter.
Here.
Counselor Nunnally.
Here.
Counselor Carlson.
Here.
Counselor Gabrielle.
Here.
Counselor Graham. Mayor Johnson.
Here. Work session this evening, we have two items for the discussion. The first item is ownership request from Northwest Montana History Museum for Central School property. Mr. Russell, do you want to give us a little background on this?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, in your packet, you saw the request sent by the board for the Northwest Museum, or Montana History Museum, requesting that ownership be transferred to them for the property of the Central School Museum at 124 2nd Avenue East. Some additional information that was provided in their letter today, going back to when the city acquired it back in the early 90s from the school district. Really, then it was brought up, basically renovated by the city and then leased to the History Museum back in 1997. And really, most of the activity and operation is handled by the museum. It's a pretty independent operation. In terms of where to go forward, really wanted to bring it forward to council before we got too much further into it, just because it could go a variety of ways from council discussion, where if there's interest in pursuing it, what would that look like, or if there's interest or not, or if there's other questions on more of the background and history that you'd may want. Thought the best place to start is just have that open dialogue between the council. I know we have representatives from the museum here that can probably answer any questions, and we can prepare to answer some of the questions pertaining to state law in terms of transferring property. But if there's other background information, we can also bring that back to council at a later date. But really just kind of, it's meaning to start to get that discussion moving forward. So with that, I'd be happy to turn it back over to you, Your Honor.
Okay. I think it would be good, just as a refresher, disposing, because we've done that in the past, but state law related to that, just so we understand that as a background, so we don't get sidetracked.
So it's disposal of municipal properties under 784201. Basically, that section, subject to the provisions of subsection 2, the city or town council may sell, dispose of, donate, or lease any property belonging to the city or town. Under that, subsection 2 states, except for property described in subsection 3, the lease, donation, or transfer must be made by ordinance or resolution passed by a 2/3 vote of all members of the council. Section 3, though, talks about if a city or town owns property containing a historically significant building or monument, the city or town may sell or give the property to nonprofit organizations or groups that agree to restore or preserve the property. The contract for the transfer of the property must contain a provision that requires the property be preserved in its present or restored state. And it provides for the reversion of the property to the city or town if there's non-compliance with those conditions of the transfer. So it's pretty wide in terms of what council can do in relation to the property, but figure the discussion may lead to some more clarification of any particular avenue council may or may not want to go.
Thoughts? Mr. Nunley?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a question related about parking spots and the parking lots. Are they all part of this deal, or are we carving out some parking lots in a discussion of this?
So the conversation is starting now.
Okay. So really it's everything.
That
Found out,
would
but-
be up for all discussion
Okay.
in terms of where those items are at.
Okay.
Mr. Hunter?
So, based on what you were reading from state law, we could condition the transfer on it being a museum and nonprofit status. And if, I guess my biggest concern is, given the costs of maintenance and whatnot, if they financially just can't pull it out, go under for whatever reason, which I certainly would hope not. I'm a big fan, supporter of having the museum in the community, but if it were to go under, the risk of having this historic structure that means a lot to the community being sold to get out from under debts and go into private ownership to a developer or somebody who might demolish it or turn it into private residences or whatever. That's the outcome I don't want. So could we condition the transfer on it being a museum and nonprofit, and if it's not that it comes back to the city basically free of charge or without cost?
Oh, yeah, you can put those restrictions on it. You can put, that there be no transfer of the property unless it goes back to the city, or a right of first refusal, or any of those different components related to it. Really, the difference between the two of those sections, one's a supermajority vote and the other isn't. So, and I'm not suspecting we'd come into a split vote on it, but you can put the reversionary clause even up in that first section as well and condition it however council may want to, if you're looking at doing a transfer of property within that. On any of those, we'd look for, putting those in if you're doing it at a reduced rate. Say if you sell at an appraised rate, I would say any new owner should have all rights and abilities for maintenance or disposal that they would want if it's at an appraised value. Usually you do a deed restriction if you're reducing the value or the transfer cost in any manner, because you're putting that new condition on it.
So clarify then, I didn't catch the difference between the 2/3 vote versus majority vote is what now under the state law?
So technically, if it contained the reversionary clause under that section of code, you'd only need a majority vote.
Okay.
You can still donate it under the first one with a supermajority vote of 6 of the 9 members, but in either one you can put any reversionary clause or deed restriction so long as it's agreeable to the other party.
Okay. And then this was maybe more a question for the museum, but are there other, my understanding, so reading the letter and stuff, the concern is the ability to raise money for maintenance costs, loans and whatnot. Is there another way other than ownership that can be achieved? Either I see that the lease is up in 10 years. I can understand kind of hesitancy with kind of the short time frame for if you're going into a longer loan term than that. If we renew the lease at say 40 years or 50 years to extend that lifetime of that lease, again, giving that confidence to any lenders, or also would there not be benefit to the city of backing any loan on maintenance costs as opposed to transferring the property? I don't, if it comes back to the city, maybe that's not a benefit, maybe that's a cost to us, but just thinking that way of kind of backstopping the loan so that they can have the confidence of the lender to get the money.
Were you asking me or asking the museum? is what I thought.
Whoever wants to answer that,
Well, so I would caution the council from backing any loan or being a signatory on any debt instrument that is not directly related to us, just as from a practical perspective.
but there's a link being the owner. If we remain the owner of the property, it's it's a loan to a asset of the property. So I could see contingencies on that up to a certain value or something like that, or on approval, not like a blanket thing, but, comes before council, we have to approve each one, so on.
Can I answer? My name is AJ King. I'm a board member for the museum. I'm also a lender at Three Rivers Bank, so been at it for 40 years. So it's very tricky. If I understand your question correctly, if the city maintains ownership and we're still leasing, I have checked into that. There are some programs to do that. They're very difficult when there's another owner and when you're the leaser of the property. And so when I have checked in, and one of the things is energy efficiency in the museum. We have a heck of a problem with the heating and cooling system right now. And so we're looking into different programs. And if you're the owner, you can take advantage of these programs at a very low rate. So those are something that if we were the owners, if we need it, we would try to.
But the city could apply for those on your behalf and just be a pass-through.
Yeah.
We do that all the time.
Yeah, yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Dodd?
First off, I think Jessica had her hand up. Is she still online? Okay. Okay. I'll let her go. She's been waiting for a while.
I just couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. I'm so sorry. I'm here. I've been here this whole time. So go ahead, Sid.
Okay. So I'm in heavy agreement with our founders that government should own the least amount of property that is feasible. So I'm interested in learning more about the proposal. And the only thing I would caveat that with is I'm really hoping that it can stay a historic building. I love that building, and I would just like to hear more about what the proposal is.
I mean, given the work session, what I'd like to do is hear from what is the proposal? So we have a little more context than that. But, so, Mr. King, yeah, if you want to.
good evening. My name is AJ King, and I'm a board member for the Northwest Montana History Museum. Like the rest of our board members, our volunteers, we have ties to our museum's home, once known as Central School. Mine goes back to the time when the school opened. My great-grandfather, Eugene Steer, was the school's first principal. Eugene's daughter, Meta, my grandmother, and her future husband, my grandfather, also known as Judge Dean King, were in the school's second graduating class. There are more stories like these that extend in families across family ties across Flathead Valley. On behalf of the Board of Directors, we appreciate the work the city does, or what you do for the city of Kalispell, and the opportunity for this workshop. As board members, our request is to take over the ownership of the building. The 130-year-old structure needs repairs, improvements, and continuing maintenance. Total costs will escalate. These major expenses include a new chiller, replacement of the fire alarm panel, some of the elevator parts, water drainage around the basement, exterior painting, brickwork, and a climate-controlled space for archival storage. This is just the beginning. Given the age of the building, more repairs and upgrades are sure to follow. A large investment into the building does not make financial sense unless the city were to grant us ownership. Granting us ownership, the building will be well maintained without future burden to taxpayers. Through fundraising and revenue generation, we as a board will be successful in carrying the ownership. The museum will continue to thrive, complementing the heart of Kalispell and recognized as a premier museum for the area. We thank you for your consideration. And I'm open to any questions, and we have a group here. If you'll please stand. Yeah, supporting this. This is our board, and we have, our board members. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Mr. King, can you tell us what the attendance or visitation you've had, over the years? Has it increased? Has it gone down? What do you project for future growth?
I'm going to let our executive director, Margaret Davis, answer that question. She is there every day, so, yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for that question, Counselor Carlson. I did hand out a little cheat sheet of stats, and I'm taking it from 2024, but we surpassed 10,000 visitors last year. That was a milestone for us. 10,336, 1,700 of those are kids, and about 1,000 are just in our third graders McLaren immersion school program that teaches like it's 1895. But we are on an upswing. We had a gain one year just recently in the last few years of 20% more than the previous year. We have 140 plus events a year. And some of those are, of course, events that we put on and regular events like book club, history book club. But we also rent out events for community meetings, celebrations of life, and all sorts of activities, rehearsals, concerts, what you name it. So sometimes we are extremely busy and we have 2 events happening at the same time in different rooms. And then I don't know if you want me to tell about other things, but we've had 130 plus exhibits since we opened in 99, and 50,000 plus items in the collection that we hold for the public good. I know that AJ mentioned that climate controlled space, but we have a really hot attic and a really cold attic depending on the time of year. And we have a more complete collection of daily interlakes than the daily interlake has. So these things are in danger of crumbling to dust just because of the extreme temperatures. So just one climate controlled room would do a lot to help us be even more responsible about the collection that we've accumulated and people trust us with. We have 350 members of the museum at different levels of sponsorship. And then we're, of course, a member of many of these local groups as well as statewide history groups. So we are an active part of the economy and culture, working closely with the Conrad and the Glacier Art Museum to bolster the culture core.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
I had a couple of questions. And Margaret, maybe you would be the best to answer this. But in terms of other museums, local museums in the state, would you say it's more common that it's owned by the property is owned by the museum or publicly owned?
Wow, I guess I've not researched that. I'm thinking, I know the the Montana Historical Society is owned by them, going through a huge renovation right now. Let's see, and Kalispell, has an assortment of arrangements going on, so I probably shouldn't go there. But I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm not sure. I wouldn't really want to guess either.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mr. Russell, question going back to this clause of it reverting back to the city if it weren't a museum or a nonprofit. So under a scenario where if we transfer the property, their owners, they take out a large loan, it's a lien against the property, they default on the loan, the bank then wants the property as collateral, but the provision is that it comes to us if it's not a museum. So how does that work out in that situation?
I can answer that
Yeah,
question.
AJ can answer that. The bank will own it, period, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what'll happen. You would have to pay off the debt to bring the ownership back to the city.
And if at that time the city doesn't have the money or the council isn't willing, then even though there's the provision within the terms of transfer that it can't be anything but a museum or a nonprofit, or you're faced with a conflict there between two provisions. You don't,
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at a legal battle.
yeah.
Because I think we'd lay claim under that we had it deeded prior to a financial debt taken out on it.
And the
You
flip-
know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
I was gonna say, the flip side is your loan to value is typically plenty of equity on the loan to value. They're not gonna loan 100% of the value of that property.
Right.
So when you look at that, you may end up in a legal battle, situations where I've been involved with restricted deeds given to nonprofits where there was lending. As the entity that gave the property away, we could have taken the property back subject to that mortgage and then sold, repaid the mortgage and recovered capital to the city if we weren't in a position. So there is some ways to structure that through contract. I'm not a lawyer, I just play one Monday nights. But we can find ways to make an agreement work because to me, it seems like the best interest would be to get the deed in their hands and out of ours so that they could proceed. And there's ways to work through that.
But if you can't sell the property, because any sale would be transferring out of nonprofit museum status to repay, even if it's low compared to the overall value of the
Would be at
property.
our option.
Right.
We would be the ones reselling, taking it back subject to the mortgage. We could make sure that that's priority over the mortgage, which means you may not be able to borrow as much, but I think there's ways to do that.
I guess my concern is putting a future city council in a position where they have whatever amount and not having the resources, or having a council that doesn't value having this property in public ownership or as a museum or public resource, and then selling the property to pay off the loan, and then it winds up in private to a developer in private. That's my concern. That's honestly, if it's not for that, I don't see any real issue here, but that's the biggest concern that really stops me here.
And I think that's a question that's worthy of getting a more in-depth legal opinion on, honestly. I mean, back and forth of what I think, but, instead of talking about what I think, let's get an actual legal opinion on it.
Yeah, I'd request that as a legal opinion on that scenario to find out where we are on that. I mean, probably the answer is it'll be dependent on a future council and what they want to do, and that makes me nervous because I know what I very strongly want it as a public resource, and anything that risks it going into private ownership that's not a public resource is something that I would not be comfortable with, and putting that on a future council really.
But on the flip side, I want to make sure the nonprofit's as viable as they can be. And I don't want to be the hindrance to that just because we might be concerned with what a future council might do. Well, then we would never make a vote.
Right. But what I heard from my question about kind of alternative ways to deal with this is I didn't hear a hard, that's not going to work, right? That there are grants that are the city could be the pass-through for, which we do in other instances, that might work. If we extend the lease to a longer lease, so it's not the 10-year timeframe that we're looking at, that might be helpful. And honestly, if we're looking at putting the future of a possibility where we're going to be on the hook of a defaulted loan, then I'd almost rather backstop a loan now as the owner than risk it going to private ownership.
And I don't know that you're necessarily on the hook. So.
Thank you, Your Honor. Somewhat agreeing with Mr. Hunter. My concern is, AJ, these folks here are amazing volunteers. You get these good people, what's the next generation and what their choices may be and maybe their motives. My question is line of succession of you amazing folks who have made this work for years. I support this, right? What do we do to protect those who really want to make sure this thrives and continues with your mission and your goal? I assume you have a succession plan and the young people coming in, not labeling you at all.
Says the man with gray hair.
But that is just to make sure that there's this continuity of an amazing thing that you all do. And I don't know if that's a question to AJ, Margaret.
Well, one thing with this legal review that you're talking about is I believe you can put provisions in the deed where basically the city council has to approve the loan. I mean, we come to you and let's say we have we get some real favorable terms on a loan to fix a particular item within the museum. With that, we bring it to the city and say, hey, you know, this is a provision that we want you to review and say, give us a green light. And I think that's one thing that could protect this. And you could put the provision in there if we ever, you know, default or we're a terrible part of Kalispell now, things go the wrong way because we've got poor management in there and you take it back. I think you can pretty much do whatever you want with it then. Regardless, you may have that loan to be looking at, but I think you can do whatever. You tear it down or put it in a parking lot, do whatever. So, yeah. We don't want that to happen. And so the next generation, we're going to be very careful about who we pick. And I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of, you know, generations. My family has the 6th generation right now that are teenagers. And so, you know, I'm going to be recruiting family members to take over this thing. So at least my spot. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you really look at it, you've got that whole concept that, oh, what if everything goes bad and we get it back? Well, at that point, if everything's gone and we own it and they're the lessee and it's gone really bad, as a council, you have to make a decision one way or another. In '97, we made the decision to put $2.5 million into renovation of the building because we wanted to retain it for its historic value. It's up to that future council. Mm-hmm. It's economic. I mean, there's so many factors that go into that decision. And valuing the history of your community where you live, work, and play, you know, that next generation, what they're trying to do is create that. And that's what fosters that next level. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you look at it and go, what's the worst case? Well, the worst case, they get the deed, they default, we have it straightened out, whatever legally, then we make a decision. Do we want to move forward and form a new nonprofit, or do we as a city want to operate the museum and do the operations? Do we want to convert it and sell it? Whatever, it's at that point we can make that decision. Future or past councils have decided this was important enough to the community to retain. Now it's up to us. Do we want to look and help them onto that next level to achieve these goals? Or do we want to be afraid of what might happen? And I look at, a lot of the things, the what ifs, we can figure those out. Mr. Dowd?
Yeah, there's really no change between that scenario and what we do every 10 years, right? Every time we renew it, we could not renew it or whatever, so it's up to the council at all times. I don't think that changes at all. If it reverts back to us, then it'll be the council's decision, which hopefully they're executing the will of the people and, keeping it historic like, most people want.
Do you have something to add, sir?
Yeah, my name's Cork Andrews. I have a little background in this. I'm on the board of a couple 501c3s. And I just talked to the manager of one of them tonight, and they need to have the deed, because when we try to get grants, and it's an ongoing thing and it's a difficult thing, the first question almost in the box is, do you own the property and how much do you owe on it? And if you don't own it, you don't owe any, you can't owe. So, you can get grants, but it is extremely, after years of trying, it's extremely difficult to get grants. And I won't be here, but I can almost guarantee you're not going to get this property back. So, and that you're going to allow them to use grants and stuff to finance it. I don't know that they'll even have to borrow unless to get started, but that's the whole point of this thing, and them owning the property. They will get grants and they will be set up to raise a lot of money. There's a lot of foundations out there. They can't, I'm not going to say can't, but it is extremely difficult through leasing. So you need to own it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Question either for AJ or Margaret. Long-term, you talked about your storage and how it's not set up for temperature controls, humidity is potentially as best it could be. I'm taking it you're going to need to be expanding at some point to grow your inventory.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, it's just something on the wish list or need list, really. And so maybe it's converting one of the old offices. I haven't even gone so far as to identify which one.
Sure.
But it seems, I don't know about like change the envelope, and I don't think we want to go there. It's a historic building. I don't think we can.
Sure.
And then I did want to answer to the generational aspect. Never know what the future will bring. It's true, but I am very new to the museum, only 3 years, so my experience dwarfs like all these folks, and I'm just so impressed. And I have looked into the history of the museum itself, and there's this priceless photo of the first group of activists receiving the keys to the building, and the look on their faces is like, what have we done? And it's just a wonderful picture, but look at what they've done. This is a well-loved institution. I'm so impressed. And we have even more volunteers than we've ever had. We have a couple of volunteers right out of college. So I do think people are interested in history. They come down to acquisitions. They go, this is cool. This is my grandparents' cabin. And maybe it's that sort of superficial screen culture or something, but I think I see they're attracted to it. And that's, kind of the third grader program is to bring people in too and their families.
So I guess where I would go, I was going to go to one step past that, just wondering, as far as we're talking building, but I'm also kind of interested in parking lots and green space around there.
Oh, gotcha.
What all are you needing for or wanting out of this?
Well, I mean, it's, I don't know, if you're thinking like big grand vision for a future, I mean, I could see, of course, keeping this awesome building. It's amazing. But I mean, maybe there's a smaller building on the, adjoining that has 150 seat room. We max out at 98 chairs and often have to turn people away. And then this whole temperature controlled space. I was just in Great Falls at the history conference last year, and they were showing off what they had done. I was jealous.
So I guess as we talk through this negotiation of what would that look like, how much space are we talking outside of the building?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because I'm pretty sure that parking lot behind is a permit lot right now.
Correct.
that are sold there. So it's another thing to take into account in that part of that discussion of, we can always subdivide that, survey that portion out and keep that as a public parking for those people that use the permit lots, but that's another component of the whole discussion.
I would just hate to make this, a wonderful gift for an organization and then landlock them in, right? And kind of take away some of the ability to grow and expand and do what you need to better that building. So that would just be my concern.
So I guess that helps clarify a question. I think what you're getting at is the museum requesting ownership of the building or also the parking lot in the park?
Well, ideally, it's this whole assessor number that we listed on our handout.
Okay. And then the question for the city on the grants that they're speaking about applying for. I know we act as a pass-through for other entities where we apply for the grants, pass through the money. Is there any reason the museum is different in any regard that would prevent us from serving in that role?
I don't know the specifics of the grants they would be looking at and what their specific components are. I can tell you that in a lot of cases, there is some independence that is desired by some granting agencies, especially foundation type things. That when you have that independence of an ownership of a parcel as a nonprofit, you may be favored upon more than as a government entity applying for the grants. Mm-hmm. But I can't speak with assurance related to that without knowing and seeing whatever specific grants they may be looking at.
And then in terms of staff resources of being that pass-through, as it nonprofits typically handle the application process when we basically just sign our name to it, or our staff involved in, doing that application, and therefore, if they're looking at a lot of grants, we may not be able to keep up with staff time.
Yeah, it just depends on the grant. I can tell you, for example, the Morning Star and Green Acres, which was supposed to be pretty much independent one, it's taken a lot of staff time, just by the very nature of it. So it's just going to probably depend on what the specific components are, but there's usually some components related to the oversight and the project management. Same thing with like the airport and the grants they have. It's typically takes some staff time to usher those projects through.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of referencing to Mayor's comment, just so in case I'm misunderstanding, but as I see it, whether we kind of backstop a loan with city ownership, they apply for a loan, we guarantee it essentially, or they own it and it comes back to us. If they default, it comes back to us with that loan outstanding that needs to be paid off. Either way, we're backstopping the loan. We're guaranteeing the loan. And we have a choice of dealing with that in either scenario. Our options are kind of available to.
You'd have a choice to go after the property subject to the loan and you'd have a council that would have this plan. What are you going to do with that? Either sell it, convert it, do something to pay off that loan. But you could look at it and go, oh, the value's less than the loan, have it. That's, but that would be all for really to look at in writing. How do we get this done legally with that opinion? And I just think there's got to be a way to make that work.
Mm-hmm. But that's the case in both scenarios,
Both
right?
scenarios.
You could rewrite the lease in a way that says if they default on a loan,
I guess it boils down to the question, does the city still want to retain ownership of this building and for what purpose? Or are we comfortable letting it go as a deed to the museum board and to the museum as an entity? And we may have to deal with some aftermath. No matter what, we have to deal with some aftermath.
Right.
Because what I'm hearing is there's a number of repairs to that building. If they abandon their project and they abandon operating as a museum, Now we look and go, okay, what do we have as a property? What do we do with it? We're really in the same situation with a deed restriction. And maybe lending involved, maybe not. I guess it boils down to, does this council feel like we're comfortable enough giving the deed to the museum, or do we, for whatever reason, want to retain that deed like Gollum's ring? And for what reason? What's the other intent if we don't want, because of the restricted deed, we can get it back. Maybe subject to a loan, may not, but that's a decision that future council can make. What I'm hearing and what I've understood as well, when you're trying to borrow money, when you're trying to go after grants, if you don't have that deed, it's a heck of a lot harder. So I guess that's where's the council? My question is, staff's looking for direction. Do we want to move forward looking at, well, let's try to craft the lease so it works for them? Or do we want to look at how do we come to an agreement that could work with council approval where we deed them the property and move forward? Which direction? We're really at that point. Or the third is, hey, we're just going to keep going as it is. It's great.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, I guess where I'm just going to go ahead and make my stand right now to let you know where I'm at. I think we move in a direction where we give this board every opportunity that they want to make this successful for the better of city of Kalispell for generations to forward, right? And I actually went over to the museum, had a good little tour a while back, and it was neat seeing that it was Dwayne Larson and some of our, in fact, Jim in the back, and a number from this council that have supported this museum over the years. And I think it's good to have that strength in a good board. That's critical in everything that it has. And I think we need to give them all the tools to be able to manage that and protect this for the city of Kalispell, for our community, to tell where we've come from. So I wholeheartedly support it. I support it in as much, even looking at is that assessor's number space, or is there more around that we need to ensure that they can grow the museum as they need to see fit. So.
Thank you, Your Honor. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to bartend at a number of events at the museum. And they're fundraisers, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place for a fundraiser. And so I agree with Mr. Nunnally. I support it 100%. The other thing with financing and applying for grants, is it so that if you have a private donor, aren't they more apt to give to something that the museum actually owns rather than, I don't want to say give it to the city, but give it to somebody else? Do you find that in your fundraising?
Absolutely, yes.
So I'm all for it. So thank you.
I agree with Sandy, 100%. I just want to see the board members 40 years from now. I want to know their names. No, I support this wholeheartedly. I think it's just good for the community. I appreciate all your hard work and what you do.
Mr. Dowd?
Yeah, we should move forward.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a little more nuanced. I don't see a whole lot of difference in the options in terms of the outcomes. And I respect this group very much. So if they say this is what they need, then I'm inclined to lean that way. I would like the legal opinion because that situation with the default is something I'm concerned about, and I would like to have that information first before I make a decision. I think, my concern is it's easier to give up on a historic and really important property for being in public ownership if we don't own it and it's coming back to us than it is if we own it. In other words, it'd be easier for a future council to make a decision, well, we'll just sell this off to pay back the defaulted loan or whatever than it would be if it's already, and it's been in public ownership for a long time. Even though I think the risk is probably low. I think most councils moving in the future would recognize the value of this property being a public resource and the historic value and keep it in ownership. So I think the risk is low, so that's why I'm not hung up too much on that. And I am leaning towards this option, but that is my concern. I would say that if we did it, I probably would support a subdivision of the property to keep the public park, the green space in front in public ownership, and just have the building itself and possibly the parking lot as well, transferring that, so you have that. But, you know, I wouldn't want to throw the public park, the public green space in here as it doesn't seem relevant to your needs.
So if I may jump in and flip that around, right now they maintain that green space, you know, so it's under their current activities. The parking lot, however, if it's permitted, that's a public use outside of the operation of the museum. And, you know, I just did a quick count of, I think there's about 32 spots. And I don't know, does the museum have any of the permits for those? Are they all private permits?
Sometimes we have a volunteer who uses the disabled parking spot there.
Behind the building?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry, not.
You're talking about on the edge. I'm looking at the parking behind the building. To the north.
Lot next to the building, that's what I call it. And then there's the line of cars, right?
Right, I'm talking about the northern parking lot.
Yep, there's one space that we use a couple days a week.
So then the rest of them are permit parking.
Yeah, and I think High Country Linen.
So, yeah, so you're talking about displacing that parking that's currently used by the public. So it's not under necessarily the operation of them. Doesn't mean you can't transfer the deed to it, but it's going to throw a different challenge
Sure.
into the component.
Sure.
So we don't maintain the green space out front as a city right now. But we do manage permit parking in any of those public lots.
So what I'm getting is a sense that we're okay with moving forward with looking at how do we come up with an agreement to deed the property. And before we even get to the end of that agreement, we'd have that legal, we'd understand that, because it would be part and parcel with that agreement. But to move forward mutually, have staff work with the board.
Well, I think probably actually the next step is, you know, this was initial discussion, and it sounds like there's interest in trying to work some form of deed transfer out. I'd almost recommend coming back to another work session. We can give you more details on the parking lot. You know, in terms of revenue that's brought in, the people that have those permits within there, and what process could be if we want to separate those two lots, or even three lots, if that's where council wants to go. But I think that'd probably be the next step, because there's, you know, from my discussions, and AJ can change me, but it doesn't seem like it's a need to do by tomorrow type avenue, but as long as we're steadily moving forward and we get another work session in the next month or two, assuming, you can start working through some of those questions, but I think some of them are probably important enough that, you know, getting a legal opinion, just so you know, and then also kind of what that usage of that other lot is and what that does to, you know, parking within the downtown area.
And maybe what the cost of the city maintaining that park space as opposed to the museum as well.
If we took over.
And parking lots and total M&O. What would it cost the taxpayers?
Well, we already maintain that. I mean, that's already our lot.
Okay. But the cost of that we maintain, if we could identify that, would be nice to see.
Okay.
Make sense? Okay, so to be continued. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. Second item, Kids Sports Complex naming request. Not very complex.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, as we heard at a previous meeting, a request to change the name of the Kids Sports Youth Athletic Complex and to recognize Dan Johns, who played a very important role in the foundation of it. So Again, another request before council that is really just a starting point of those discussions to see where council may want to go. And with that, I'm happy to turn that discussion point over to the council. I know we do have representatives from Kids Sports here that can address some of that background, and a lot of it occurred, well before, a lot of the staff were even here, so they can probably give a pretty good background on a lot of the work that went into it. I included the 2 leases to show that even at the very beginning, it was identified that, the city's initial contribution was not going to address all the needs out there. And I think a lot of that came through some of the work of an individual that is focus of this discussion tonight. So with that, happy to turn it over back to council.
And I guess, kind of getting back, this was a 99-year lease originally, and then the state.
So you're looking at a lease between the state from 97 and then an MOU with Kids Sports. So the initial lease was, that long extended, but it gets reevaluated every year or every few years. And so this is kind of separate from the discussion with the agreement with Kids Sports, but any state land is obligated to reevaluate and get the highest dollar value they can through it. That initial lease was at a very low value, very much undeveloped property up in the northern end. Over the years, that property increased in value, and that next lease was coming through. That was a very expensive. We worked with the state to get a permanent lease on it, and I think it was like around $2.3 million that the city did pay for to acquire that permanent lease, really to finish off that project into its permanency. Kind of not so much different from the discussion here. We're working on a lease that could have gone away and lost all the development that was through there. The city back in maybe 2013 or 14 ended up making that made that full permanent lease payment to the state. So we're not subject to reappraisals and revisions within that. So once that was done, the second document was the MOU that is now contains with Kids Sports, talks about the operating agreement between them.
Okay. Appreciate that, just interest sake, because it's been a huge investment in time and effort from everybody on this. So you want to go ahead and.
Roy Beekman, I reside at 241 Commons Way here in Kalispell. On July 7th, I was at the council meeting and I had 2 pages of notes on what I was going to talk about, and kind of gave you a background, told you a little bit about all of the benefits that Kids Sports contributes to the city. Not knowing that this morning in the newspaper I would be on the front page. And so I'm going to take you through my day from that point on. After I read the paper, and it pretty much told everything that I had said at the council meeting, and I'm not going to reiterate any of that, but about 6:30 I started getting text messages and phone calls from some people I hadn't heard and seen in years. They were all thanking me for bringing this up, this renaming of Kids Sports to honor Dan Johns, and they asked, what can I do to help? Later I went golfing, and I'm up at the golf course, and I had same thing happen. I'd say no less than 10 people came up to me, thanked me for my efforts on this, and said, what can I do to help? There are some people here. I did not solicit them. They showed up on their own, but I did not think I needed to fill this chamber with 50, 60 people, all of them getting up here and saying what I'm saying. I didn't think that the council needed to have their emails boxes filled with letters of, saying, do this, rename this. My idea or my thought to all of these people as I was talking to them was, sometimes if something is just right, it will happen. And I guess that's kind of where I'm at right now. I later on talked with Jason Johns in Oregon, let him know he had already heard there was an article in the paper and this and that. And we're talking, and he said, you know, Roy, that was Dan's second job. It was his whole life for a while. Kids sports in the Miracle Field. I mean, he did it, you know. I do not believe that we would have the facility that we have presently if it wasn't for his efforts. I consider Dan a friend. There was times when we coached against each other. There were times when we coached with each other. I've been on trips with him. I've been with him. Sorry, I do this. I've been with him since the start of kids sports. But I was just holding on to his coattails. Man, he was going, and I'm just along for the ride. Jason said, you know, he always wanted this to be his legacy. And I think what a way to honor him by renaming it Dan Johns, and I don't care if it's Dan Johns Kids Sports, Dan Johns Kalispell Youth Athletic Facility, but I would like to see his name included in that facility somehow. And I encourage you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. So this is one of those things where I think, Roy, you'd asked this 7 years ago or something. I remember, I think it was like 7 years ago, we'd kind of had the inquiry, can we rename it?
Yeah, it was 2016 when I initially started this resolution and kind of got kicked down the road.
And it was just one of those, just wait, get kids sports done, get everything wrapped up. For whatever reason, that's where we went as a council. That's kind of what we did. And, you know, one of the things that I look at is we have a baseball field in another part of town that we forgot why we have that field.
Mm-hmm.
And we remembered when we started to repurpose that field. It was brought to our attention. And it's one of those things, a lot of people will do things to try to get their name on it. A lot of things will do things, you know, to try to be in the paper. Some people do things just to do them because they're right. And to forget who made those efforts, I think, removes a bit of history that should be remembered for future generations.
Absolutely.
There's a reason we used to name schools. A few years ago, there's a reason they were starting to rename schools. But I think looking at the effort that Dan put into it, and like Roy, because I'm biased on this. I used to live next to Kids Sports until Friday. But I did coach a couple years with Dan. He helped coach one of my younger sons. Last year he played majors. And then worked with Dan on Miracle Field stuff. And his heart was in that field. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we looked at going from a 99-year lease because we were afraid we might lose that, that we now have it in perpetuity. To me, it makes sense that in 100 years, somebody understands why are these fields here? And we don't just have kids sports and have someone come in and put, oh, we got to redo the fields. And the next thing you know, we see all the fields being redone. And then we see a sign that goes up that says, you know, Walmart Fields at Kalispell. Whatever, some corporate name. I think I'd rather remember the people who originally did this. And to me, the kids sports name doesn't really encompass everything. It really was the embodiment of one person that drove this, because I think there was a huge effort. Dan led the way. And I honestly think that there were times we ran into stumbling blocks. Dan had just put his head down and find a different way to get it done. And to me, I think it makes sense. I think that we need to preserve our history. And if we just want to move forward with the name Kids Sports, it doesn't really accomplish that, in my mind. It's nameless. And I think it makes sense to do this. But I'd fully admit, I am biased. I worked with Dan he worked as my attorney on things. I coached with him. There's times I just had lunch with him just to gripe. So,
Thank you, Your Honor. I have to say that I am biased also. I've been in my Rotary Club for almost 23 years, and I remember Dan coming to our club with the plea and the presentations, and it wasn't just once, it was a few times a year, and he would give a progress report. The man, he was relentless in doing this and achieving this. So I totally agree that it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a question. I'll start out by saying this. I completely support this name change. I think this is the right thing for Kalispell. I think when we can honor somebody who's done so much, I think it's a good thing. My question is what is the fiscal impact of making the change? Because I think we have some city signs out there. We'll have to do some city signs, which I am not saying I don't want to do this because of that. I want to go into this.
Yeah, I would say it's de minimis.
Okay.
I can't give you a full number in terms of what that would be, but we replace signs here and there throughout our parks. We did that 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Had a bunch that were just changed as part of the process, just some of the standard upkeep.
I kind of figured that's where it was going to be at. I just wanted to make sure that I asked the question just so that somebody in the community is going to ask that, right? So, but I wholeheartedly support this.
Okay, I'm missing anything in my chat in terms of expenditure?
Thank you, Your Honor. I wholeheartedly agree with your sentiments on this. I think what a wonderful way to honor somebody who has such a big impact on the community and created just an incredible resource for our kids and the community generally. And just hearing folks describe Dan, I'm sorry, I've never had the privilege of meeting him. So yeah, I fully support this as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is really, I've put a lot of thought into this and worked with Mr. Beekman, Mr. Slider, Dan, 30 years ago, County Parks and Recreation. I get this, but I caution council, and I'm going to support this just because I'm biased too, but I caution council on future things like this. I almost wish we would have acknowledged Dan up front. We all know how much he did, and we all know about Miracle Field, but as a county parks manager for 30 years, you get the people who lost a veteran, they come home in a box and they put some work into a park and they want to change that name for an honorary type thing. I think a policy needs to be developed in the future to make sure, because when you turn somebody down, and I've had to do it, it's really difficult when they lose their child and they've contributed to something, a park, a facility, playground equipment donated for that. I think there needs to be some things done to make sure that we don't discriminate. I mean, Dan Johns, he's up here, right? But Joe Blow, who comes and wants to change a name for something, becomes really difficult when you have to all of a sudden make a policy, which we had to do in the county, of, okay, we'll name a picnic table. And we've dealt with this with the Slider family, specifically at Summers Beach, and the McCord family. Many issues out there where we just allowed Chuck McCord to put up a rock statue because we didn't want to begin changing names. But then we have them out there. We have Kelsey Cummings Park. But Volunteer Park was much different, where people gave a lot of money but didn't want their name associated with it. This man isn't asking for his name to be associated. This is Mr. Beekman. It's all on Mr. Beekman. And that's a whole other story. But I think we need to do something, because you will be surprised. People that will step forward and oh my God, my grandfather did something for X Park that doesn't have Lawrence Park or Thompson Field, or now if we change this, it just has to be really gone into, and maybe even a policy or work session to identify how we move this forward in the future, to make sure you're not lit up with a lot of things that you're all of a sudden changing names constantly, or putting one against the other. Is a difficult position to be into. So I'd almost like to see Chad and the new city manager, whoever that may be, identify some things where we set a policy, because it can.
You're already gone. Doug has been Russell.
The only thing with Mr. Jones, I was just always so jealous that he was all about baseball and soccer. I mean, it all became that. I wanted a gym up there so bad. I tried to talk to the city manager. I thought we should have a gym up there too, and I'd name that Dan Johns in a heartbeat too. But I just want to caution this going down the road in the future, that some policies should be in place for naming rights of things. And we did develop a policy within the county that might be worth looking at for things in the future, because it can become very difficult when you say no to somebody. It hurts. It could be somebody who is, like I say, lost it in war, a young child, and they have done a lot for the community, and it gets very difficult. But this one, for me, biased, working with this man, the pleasure of working with him 30 years ago, all throughout the process, and Mr. Beekman and others, this is huge for the community. I still almost, the miracle field was so important. I'm kind of one to say maybe a field still does that honor, but I don't have a problem going full meal deal and having it right on the sign. I think Kalispell and the taxpayers of Kalispell still need to be acknowledged because of that money that was given, and this wouldn't have happened without that partnership. I still think that's important. I agree. The cost of switching things over, people are still going to come. They love it, all because of these folks, Dan specifically. But I just caution that in the future, to have some policy that is developed between Parks, Recreation, city staff, attorney, whatever, because you're going to get another one. Somebody, whatever council is here, is going to get another one, and it could be very difficult, but I'm going to support this.
Mr. Dowd.
So I don't really have a huge horse in this race. I grew up in Great Falls, born and raised in Great Falls. I was actually still in the Army when Kid Sports became an entity. I don't see the Dan Johns Kid Sports Complex being a confusing name change. I think people will still understand exactly what it is. It seems like the community's 100% behind this. And I didn't know Dan at all, so my only concern about this entire thing is when you tie it to somebody's name, you tie it to their legacy, and it sounds like he's got a great one. But that's the only concern that entered my mind when I first heard about this. Other than that, I am totally behind it.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would agree with everything that's been set up here. And I would not have thought of that, Mr. Fisher, so I appreciate your insight there. But I wasn't on council yet in 1997 when this started, but I was on council when Mr. Slider and Mr. Johns and Mr. Beekman and lots of other folks were coming forward, proposing this incredible opportunity to partner with the city. So I think it's a great way to honor Mr. Johns. And I don't think it would take anything at all from the name of the park to have his name on it. I think that's a great way to do it. Mm-hmm. So I say let's do what we can to make that happen. Thank you.
Okay. Not bad for a kid who grew up in Kalispell. So, no, I think, Mr. Russell, it's clear that.
Yeah, if I can just get some guidance on terms of the overall name. Sounds like it doesn't, too much concern after going after Dan Johns, but to go with Dan Johns.
Yeah, Justin?
My name is Justin Slider. I reside at 31 Glacier Circle in Kalispell. I'm the president of Kids Sports, and I'm going to put my notes away after all that's been said because I don't think anything more needs to be said about Dan, other than I will acknowledge he was an attorney, so there probably are a few people out there who have another opinion of it. But, my experience with Dan was, people talk about it was for the fields. It was not. It was for the kids. And that is what he cared about. He cared about making sure that every kid had an opportunity. I don't think I've ever run across a person who was more diplomatic and more gracious in every dealing that we've had. So I think it's a great opportunity. I think the Kids Sports Board would appreciate the opportunity to be involved in how the complex is going to be named. I think we can see here tonight, we've thrown around about 5 iterations of what is this. I think from the city's perspective, it's the Kalispell Youth Athletic Complex. Kids Sports is the board that has facilitated the construction. To date, through Dan's hard work and, lots of generosity, I think the nonprofit has put well over $4 million into the facility, not to mention, all of the user groups have also contributed quite a bit to those facilities. So I think that's all we would ask is the opportunity to just be involved in that. But, like Roy said, we don't have a idea in mind or what that should be from a naming perspective. I think the signs all say Kalispell Youth Athletic Complex. Everybody refers to it as Kids Sports. This could be an add-on to the Kalispell Youth Athletic Complex or some other iteration to be named later.
So I guess I would just ask that the board figure out which name they would like. Forward it over to us so that we can deliberate on that. Because it sounds like we could get this done in pretty short order. We can't do it at a work session, but at a council session, we could do it.
Kind of off of what Justin was saying, that Kids Sports is the entity that's up there. Everybody considers it. They know what you're talking about when you say Kids Sports. However, because this is a collaboration between, the city and Kids Sports, and I'm just kind of speaking, Justin and I have discussed this a little bit right here, that I believe if we put Dan Johns Kalispell Youth Athletic Facility, it would make more sense. That way, the Kalispell name, which is the government entity, they're noted, that name is out there too. So that's kind of right now our recommendation.
Yeah, we don't care that it reflects the government entity, but we are concerned that it reflects Kalispell's.
Thank you for saying that, Sid. I did before I could.
I don't have a particularly strong opinion other than somebody who, writes a lot of documents. Really long names can be really annoying, so I would tend towards shorter names, just because if you're applying for grants or doing whatever, putting in the paper.
Copy paste, come on.
I prefer shorter names. Put that out there.
So Dan Johns Kalispell Youth Athletic Complex. Sure.
No, it's
It
gotta,
makes sense.
it's gotta come back to us, right?
Yeah.
We just have to make sure that the initials don't mean something bad in another language.
Well, we already refer to it as KYAC a lot, and I've never been dinged on it. So if we're just talking Dan Johns Kalispell Youth Athletic Complex, it kind of flows. Can be changed, but how about we work on that one as we move forward tentatively? Unless
And in
we
10 years, we'll just call it the Dan Johns Fields.
That's right.
It'll be the common
be a great name.
nomenclature.
Just make it Dan Johns Field.
Kayak, DJ Kayak.
I think we've got direction. We can move forward. And Roy, if you want to let them know that the 2 on, 2 out tell him now he's one strike away from getting the win. So,
And
all
our
right.
best to Dan and family as a council, that he do as good as he can.
Yep. Okay, any public comment on items that we didn't discuss tonight?
Good evening. My name is Melanie Goley. I reside at 1815 8th Avenue East here in Kalispell. I'm here as a representative of St. Matthew's Catholic School, and I'm in follow-up of a letter that I mailed to the mayor's office about a month ago. But I had somebody tell me that if you want something done, you have to come here and you have to speak. So here I am. I am requesting some type of city recognition for one of our teachers. I wanted to make that formally in front of all of you, and so I'm going to read an excerpt from the letter that I had mailed in. The name Sister Judy Lund may already be familiar to you. Sister Judy has been teaching Flathead Valley students since 1991. She has inspired, nurtured, and guided hundreds of children in that time. She was one of the driving forces in addressing teenage homelessness with the creation of the Sparrow's Nest and still campaigns for this organization. She is the first to arrive at our school in the morning, often 6 a.m., no matter the weather, greeting students and parents at the door, knowing their names, offering kind words and hugs, and she continues to teach in a classroom instructing 5th and 6th graders in religious studies. It is no secret that Sister Judy puts others before herself, and we are in awe of her untiring faith and commitment to the St. Matthew's School community, as well as the people of the Flathead Valley. We want to honor her and thank her for all she has done and continues to do, and we're asking for your help. Sister Judy will turn 90 years old on August 31st. As a school, we will celebrate her the week of our return to school after Labor Day. And I wrote in the hopes that you will present Sister Judy with a key to the city. I've since learned that maybe you guys don't do that. I cannot think of a more worthy recipient or one who has so positively influenced generations of Montanans. And so I envision a school assembly with our students, teachers, faculty, and our Catholic bishop in attendance, and hopefully a representative from the city there as well. I would add to that since I wrote that letter, Sister Judy has decided that this will be her last year of teaching. And so I understand that perhaps the city of Kalispell doesn't have keys, but I am hoping maybe a city resolution or some other type of recognition can be made to honor this person who has devoted over 70 years of her life to teaching, a person who insisted upon sleeping outside in the cold overnight for the Sparrow's Nest When the Night Comes fundraiser year after year until those concerned for her health and well-being insisted that she stop doing so. So instead, she just moved to her car and she now sleeps in her car overnight. She continues to volunteer and fundraise for the food bank and the warming shelter. Her efforts and energy often fly under the radar because she is not one to toot her own horn. So in an increasingly complex and difficult world, Sister Judy focuses on the basics, humility and compassion. And I hope that you will deem her worthy of recognition as one of the very best residents of our great city of Kalispell. And I have some extra copies. I wasn't sure of how this worked, of the letter that I submitted, because along with it is a really good article that the Interlake published back in 2015 that gives a little bit more information about Sister Judy. So if I can hand these out to any of you, I would love to.
They go over to Amy.
Over to Amy.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you.
She gets the anthrax first.
And that's what I have. That's,
Thank you.
yes. So I'm just curious how this works, though. After I speak with you, do I wait to have someone get in contact with me? Do I
Yeah,
have to
I'll
come?
get in contact with you. I was going to have been in
Okay.
the process of moving for 3 weeks, so.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
stayed in the city, so don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, but you're
Well, this was very interesting. I've got to tell you, I'd never been to one of these before, and so it was very enlightening. I think I'm a fan. I find it very interesting to find out what's going on. Okay.
Who's your favorite?
Just say Doug Russell at this point, and he'll be flattered.
Well, I really appreciate your time, so I hope all of you have a great evening.
Oh, and I'll probably bring some students that are my children that Sister Judy taught, so.
Nice. Okay. Thank you very much.
August 31st, right?
That's her birthday.
That's her birthday.
But we will be celebrating once we start school again, which is after Labor Day.
After Labor Day, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Nobody online? No ridicule from the internet? Mr. Russell? This the second to last, third to last? What is this? How many more of these do you have?
I have not counted yet, but,
I know I have
4.
156 days.
So we'll start working on the 2 items tonight. We'll get some of the information related to Central School Museum and start working with them on a follow-up work session with some of the information and data. We'll also work with Kids Sports on moving forward. I don't know how much would need to be done on it, but we'll probably want to coordinate so when that resolution is before the council, they can know and invite whomever.
Yeah.
That it's not just a consent agenda item. But we'll also work on, with council's approval, a naming policy, because you are entirely right, Mr. Fisher. When we've had certain requests before, we've always said if we don't have a naming policy and we're going to rely upon council direction, a lot of times then it just kind of ends at that point. But I think you are entirely right in looking at a naming policy, so we'll start work on that as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay, anything from council? Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ironically, 3 calls today about the traffic on South Woodland. We know one who we get continuous calls about, but I had 2 others today. Many dead deer, people driving 40 miles an hour. I know the police department, who is not here tonight, has done a really good job putting up the speed limit sign there and doing their best. And I see police there frequently on the side streets trying to slow them down. But I came that way tonight. Everybody, 45 miles an hour. The request was, and is to make it more of a historic district, try and slow them down to 15. I know that's not going to happen, probably without a school zone or some legal justification for that. But ironically, just today, it must have been a heck of a day, but 45 to 55 miles an hour down that street. Just a concern from several taxpayers along there that it's just getting out of control, almost used as another little east side bypass, which we've talked about before. But I just wanted to bring it up if it could be passed on to the police department to maybe do what they can. And I know they do a lot, but
Well, any complaint that comes in of that nature, we say, okay, yep, we'll throw it in for increased patrol. One of the things that we really look at is, data-driven policing. So you look at, the effort of speed control is for safer streets. Not necessarily to write tickets.
Exactly.
So, so that's, they focus on areas that have accidents that are through there. So they're going to have that, but, we'll also go out and do speed studies, and a lot of times, and the data sometimes tells us something different than people observe.
Exactly.
So, we share all of that information whenever we get those complaints in terms of, extra patrol, any things of that nature
And
as
as
well.
always, the second part was the truck traffic, the semi-truck traffic that I would like that investigated.
I didn't have anything, but now I do. I have a Kalispell moment to share. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was just getting dusk, and I was driving right past the Conrad Mansion, and there was a deer. So I slowed down for it. I noticed when I got closer that it was right at the crosswalk where the Conrad Mansion is, on the Conrad Mansion side. And as soon as I slowed down, it walked right across the crosswalk, and I continued. So it was a very Kalispell moment.
Anything? Anything? Nothing? Nothing? Okay, I think the only thing I have observed, traffic-wise, today, for whatever reason, I always still drive north on 4th Avenue East. and south on Third. Today, I thought, I'm gonna mix things up and go north on Third. What I've learned is if you've lived here for a while and we're used to the one-ways, you assume you have right-of-way coming down. And if you don't pull over and wait in the spot, oh boy, you get rewarded with a hand gesture. With that, I'm gonna take that and appreciate the fact that somebody thinks I'm number one today.